The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, greetings. Welcome to another presentation in this public service nation-building series, The Law and You. This is program number 834, coming to you on Monday the 15th of August 2016. On this program, I continue the topic I started last week, the CyberCrimes Bill, and this is part 2. But before getting into the topic, a few preliminary comments. Firstly, and as usual, I would like to express my deepest condolences to all those families which have suffered recent bereavements. And I know that the family of the late Archdeacon Tilbert John is having a memorial service for him tonight, otherwise known as a 40-night wake. All the very best to Sister John and the other members of their family. Now, the Olympics are on, and we would like to express our deepest congratulations to Mr. Nicholas Sylvester on placing first in his heat in swimming, the 50-yard free stroke. Unfortunately, no one in his heat made the semifinals, but the brother at 15 years has already marked the way. Congratulations also to the other members of the St. Vincent performing contingent, Miss Izzy Joachim, who did reasonably well in her heat as well, to Kaniki Alexander and Brandon Valentine Paris. And today at about minutes to 1, I saw an interview, live interview with Keith Joseph, the president of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Olympic Association, from the studio at ESPN at Rio de Janeiro. And I want to say I was so proud of Brother Keith. He was, as usual, articulate, knowledgeable, and he did St. Vincent and the Grenadines proud. Congratulations, Brother Keith Joseph. And I must say, I agree with you that the cutting off of St. Vincent and Grenadines at the match past, the opening of the Olympics, was terrible, and I'm glad you made a strong statement. Now, the issue of tribalism, political tribalism, has got so bad that there is an article which is shocking in the newspaper of last Friday, and it says, "Gypsies thank you sparks outrage." And the newspaper has reported, and I quote, "A public show of gratitude to Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves from an opposition NDP activist has sparked outrage among her party supporters. The spiraling controversy surrounds Laverne Gibson Phillips, an announcer with Nice Radio and also an activist for the NDP. Phillips is ailing and spent over 2 weeks at the Milton Cater Memorial Hospital. While she was at hospital, NDP supporters were busy raising funds to assist her in getting the necessary tests and medical attention she needed. Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves intervened in the matter and assisted the ailing announcer in going to Barbados and having an MRI done. The result of that test reportedly shows a tumor on Phillips' brain. After she was released from hospital here, Phillips took to social media to express her gratitude to the Prime Minister. And apparently, because the young lady, as an activist NDP supporter, thanked the Prime Minister for assisting her in going abroad, persons in her party turned on her and remonstrated with her for issuing a public thank you to the Prime Minister. Good Lord, have we reached that low? Is it now a political offense to say thank you to a Prime Minister who has assisted you with your medical problems? I mean, we really have gone very, very low. And I lament that we have reached a stage where somebody is castigated for what? For saying thank you to the Prime Minister who assisted her. Oh Lord. Finally, our good friend and brother Dr. Cecil George Riley is back in St. Vincent again for his annual August convention at Reeves Level. And on this convention, he will be having for the first time a meeting outside of Reeves Level. So on Wednesday night this week, the 17th of August at 7 o'clock, Dr. Cecil George Riley and his church, the Freedom Hall Church of God, will be having a convention service at the Spring Village Methodist School. And I urge everyone in Spring Village and in neighboring villages to go out and be blessed. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it to the opening of the convention last evening, not feeling too well, but I'm hoping that I'll be there at Spring Village on Wednesday evening. Okay, we get into the topic for the evening, the CyberCrimes Bill Part 2. Well, now that the bill has been passed in Parliament, I should really refer to it as an act, because when a bill is passed, it becomes an act. When it is signed by the Governor General, it becomes a law, and when it is published in the Gazette as having coming into force, then it becomes a law in force. Please excuse me. Those of you who follow this program would know that in recent, I make it a policy to comment on legislation of importance as they are passed in Parliament. And let me remind you of some recent programs which I hosted on this very program. On the 1st of February this year, program number 817, I dealt with the topic Publication of False News, Section 64 of the Criminal Code. That was before I had heard anything about the CyberCrimes Bill, and long before the bill was introduced in Parliament. And I think it was introduced in Parliament on the 31st of May. So there was on the 1st of February this year, dealing with the topic, the publication of false news, to show you that Section 64 of the Criminal Code made it an offense. And I will read you what Section 64 says. Section 64 says, any person who publishes any false statement, rumor, or report which is likely to cause fear or alarm or to disturb the public peace is guilty of an offense and liable to imprisonment of 1 year. Subsection 2. It shall be a defense to a charge under subsection 1 if the accused person proves that prior to the publication he took such measures to verify the accuracy of such statement, rumor, or report as to lead him reasonably to believe that it was true. And when I dealt with that section 64, I explained that it is a law which the Constitution recognizes and excuses. Not only that, Section 64 was challenged in the High Court in St. Vincent and Grenadines. Dr. Ralph Gonsalves appeared for Metro, the late Edgerton Richards, challenging 64 and saying it violated the Constitution. The High Court in St. Vincent rejected the challenge. The High Court said, no, that law is quite okay. Quite okay. It doesn't offend the Constitution. Uncle Metro appealed to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal agreed with Justice Satruhan Singh that that law, Section 64, was quite okay, that that law does not offend the Constitution of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I am making the statement right here and now, as I did last week, that in my opinion, the CyberCrimes Act 2016 does not offend the Constitution of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Whether I am right or wrong remains to be seen. But in my respectful opinion, the act passed in Parliament on Friday last week does not offend the Constitution of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But it is only if the act is challenged after it comes into force and it goes to court that we will know for sure. But for the time being, I am telling you that based on all the law that I know, that act, the CyberCrimes Act, will be found not to have offended the Constitution of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But let me continue with the other programs I dealt with this week. And that program, 817 of the 1st of February, was repeated on the 8th of February. On the 15th of February this year, program number 818, I dealt with the topic, Opposition Lawmaker Should Debate the Budget Bill. That was the topic of program 818, aired on this 15th of February, repeated on the 22nd of February. On the 29th of February this year, program 819, I dealt with the topic, the Parliament Bill 2016, part 1, and on the 7th of March 2016, I dealt with the Parliament Bill part 2 in program 820. And in those two programs, I pleaded with the government not to go through with the passage of the Parliament Bill, which sought to levy a fine on opposition members who are absent from Parliament without reason or excuse. That bill has not been brought back, and I hope the Prime Minister would decide to just let that slide. Now, in the Criminal Code of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I have found at least 39 sections of the Criminal Code which create offenses which are capable of being committed by either the spoken word or the written word. So that for those who say that the CyberCrimes Bill is unconstitutional, or the CyberCrimes Act, I should remember to say, those who say that it is unconstitutional because it interferes with freedom of speech had better go through the Criminal Code to see at least 39 other sections which interfere with the freedom of speech, which make it an offense to do certain things. And I'm going to read out all of them to you rapidly without explanation. I just call the sections for those who really want to check these things, so that we can fit the Cybercrimes Act into its proper perspective, namely as just another law which criminalizes behavior which can be committed by the spoken word or by the written word. Now, these are the sections of the Criminal Code, and there may be more. I'm not saying these are all the sections in the Criminal Code. These are the sections in the Criminal Code which make it an offense to do or say or write certain things. and I will read them very rapidly. Section 38, high treason for people who levy war against St. Vincent and Grenadines or does any act preparatory thereto. The penalty is death. Section 39, treasonous words carry a penalty of life imprisonment. Section 46, incitement to mutiny carries a penalty of life imprisonment. Section 53, 1C, uttering seditious words carry a penalty of 5 years. Section 60, unlawful oaths carry a penalty of life imprisonment. Section 61, unlawful oaths to commit offenses other than capital offenses, a penalty of 7 years. Section 64, with which I have dealt with, publication of false news likely to cause fear or alarm, a penalty of 1 year. Section 65, defamation of foreign personages, 2 years. Section 81, challenging or offering to fight, 1 year. Section 83, threatening violence, 5 years. Section 92, personation of public officer, 3 years. Section 93, threat of injury to person in the public service, 2 years. Section 94, deceiving witness, 2 years. Section 96, false swearing, 2 years. Section 97, conspiracy to defeat the course of justice, 5 years. Section 98, offenses relating to judicial proceedings, 2 years. Section 99, perjury, 7 years. Section 101, fabrication of evidence, 7 years. Section 112, giving false information to public officer, 5 years. Section 118, disturbing religious assembly, 2 years. Excuse me, please. Section 119, writing or uttering words with intent to wound religious feelings, 2 years. Section 138, procurement of a woman by threats or intimidation, 2 years. Section 139, procurement of a woman by false pretenses, 2 years. Section 153, fraudulent pretense of marriage, 7 years. Section 155, falsely pretending to be a marriage officer, 5 years. Section 162 and 161 and 162, make provocation a defense to a charge of murder. If a person is charged with murder and the person can prove that he or she has been provoked by things said or things done or both, then the charge has to be reduced to manslaughter. Section 195, obstructing the lawful detainer of himself or another person. Section 196, obstructing the police in the execution of their duty, 2 years. Section 223, obtaining property by deception, 5 years, 2 years summary conviction, 10 years on indictment. Section 225, obtaining services by deception, 2 years on summary conviction, 5 years on conviction on indictment. Section 226, obtaining pecuniary advantage by deception, 5 years summary, 2 years summary, 5 years indictment. Section 229, false statements by company directors or officers, 7 years. Section 232, blackmail, 14 years. Section 261, personation, 1 year. Section 268, threat to destroy or damage property, 10 years. Sections 274 to 281, criminal libel. I will deal with this in a subsequent program all by itself. Section 281, common nuisance, 6 months. 283, obscene publications, 9 months. 287, disorderly conduct, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, depending on the circumstances. Now, I've just read you 39 sections from the criminal code which create criminal offenses for words spoken or written, so that the Cybercrimes Act simply fits into place and shows that it is not against the Constitution to make it a criminal offense to do certain things. Now, turning to the Cybercrimes Act, I did receive a copy of the changes which were proposed to the Act. I received them the day before the meeting of Parliament. And extensive changes were made. And then I followed most of the speeches in the House when the debate took place on that bill. And I must say that the presentation by Minister Camilo Gonsalves was simply masterful. And at the end of the debate, the Prime Minister announced that several other small changes were made to the bill. So I will not want to read you any of the sections of the Act, because I do not know if those are sections which were subsequently changed. Now, you will recall my saying in last week's program that I found nothing objectionable in the bill. Now, the bill has been tidied up, and some of the issues which were complained about were either taken out or modified. Reading the bill with the changes proposed in the Select Committee, it is even a better bill than the original. And I listened to much of what was said for the bill and against the bill. Now that it has been passed into an act, it will go on the law books, and it will be open to persons to challenge that act. But let me say that in order to challenge that act, you would first have to contrive to get yourself arrested and charged. And when you are taken to court, then you can object to the act on whatever basis you feel you want to object on. But in our system, you can't just go and say, tell the court, I object to a certain act. The court doesn't act that way. The court responds to a person who, having been charged, complains that something is wrong with the bill. And the only complaint you can really make against a bill is that you can allege that it is unconstitutional. So it may be at some future time, someone may go to Parliament and may go to the court, and challenge the bill based on what has taken place in the course of their trial. Those who are elderly and have long memories would recall that a few years ago, a lot of furor was made in the public domain about what was called the Wild Act. There was a piece of legislation in which it was proposed that it would be a defense to a charge of stealing if one proved that something was going wild. And that created a lot of fuss. It was said that, all hell would break loose and all sorts of things would happen. My good people, since the passage of that act, not a single prosecution has been brought, not a single furor has been created, in fact. So to those who still insist that this bill is bad because it offends the Constitution, this and that and terror, I respectfully disagree. That is my opinion, but it is an opinion fortified by 40 years of legal studying. That is what is behind this opinion. When I give an opinion on a piece of legislation, I do so from the perspective of somebody who knows what he is saying when it comes to the laws of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I heard one member of parliament on the opposition side poo-pooing that, as if to say, what does Campbell know? Well, Campbell doesn't know everything, but Campbell knows enough to know that the CyberCrimes Act is a useful piece of legislation, and I, for one, am happy it has been passed. It would put an end to maliciousness, because most of the sections of the Act, as I told you last program, begin with the words, a person who intentionally and without lawful excuse or justification does this and that and the other. Intentionally. So only those who intentionally do things which they know to be wrong, defame people's character, and misuse the internet have anything to fear. Cybercrimes means it's a crime committed by use of computer and related devices, tablets, iPads, cell phones. So only those who have malicious intentions have anything to fear from that act. That is all from this program of The Law and You. Let me remind you, Wednesday night, 7 o'clock, Spring Village Methodist School. Go out and hear Bishop Cecil George Riley of the Freedom Hall Church of God. Until next Monday, Divi, when I come before you again with another program of this public service nation building series, The Law and You, may the good Lord bless us all.
The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.